So I was scrolling through a Gen X forum on the old interwebs. Yeah, I'm not completely analog. And I came across this comment. Basically it said, some of you are starting to sound like the new boomers and you need to stop. Not only that, on a comment on one of my videos recently, one of them said, you sound like a boomer. Ouch. That hurts. That cut deep. Boomer. Is it that? To be honest, it really pees me off. To quote Peter Griffin, that grinds my gears. And before you say, methinks the Gen Xer doth protest too much, bear with me. Because it got me thinking that idea, the comparison, well, it feels so fundamentally wrong. I mean, to me, anyway, you know, as a Gen Xer. So why does being called a boomer get under our skin as a Gen Xer? I mean, it's more than just a birth year, you know, anywhere 1965 to 1980. It's a completely different life experience, a completely different operating system, if you were. If you're a Gen X and you felt that little sting, or if you're from another generation and you've ever wondered why us Gen Xers get so touchy and annoyed if we're ever mistaken for a boomer, let's get into it. Because we are not the same, ladies and gentlemen. Oh no. Reason one, our childhoods are completely different. All right, so first things first, the core of our identity was forged in a world that for all intensive purposes does not exist anymore. We were the last generation to have a fully analog childhood before being thrown into a digital adulthood. And a huge part of that was being, as I've mentioned before, the Latchkey generation. Remember that? I mean, for a lot of us, both parents were working, or maybe divorce rates were on the rise and we were coming home to an empty house on a regular basis. As I've mentioned before, you'd have, you know, your key, your latch key on a piece of string around your neck. You'd let yourself in, settle down with a wagon wheel and a pot noodle and see what was ever on the telly, if there was daytime telly at that time, of course. Now, this wasn't neglect. Well, it certainly wasn't considered that back in the day, let's just say that. It was just the way things were back then. It kind of gave us this fierce independence. I mean, it's strange now when I think about it, how even my own kids, I don't kind of leave at home. My son is 15 years old and I still have conversations with his mum about whether it's all right for him to be in the house on his own, which is, to me, is a bit crazy, but we're still sort of super sensitive. We still see him as a child. I mean, for God's sake, the kid is taller than me now. Anyway, back to us Latchkey kids. We were raised to be resourceful because we had to be. Nobody was scheduling our play dates or organising our enrichment activities. No, we just went out outside until we got that rallying call of supper, dinner time, or when the street lights started coming on. And the UK experience of this was so specific, wasn't it? In America, they had the high school proms, they had big graduation ceremonies, all this stuff that we kind of seemed so exotic and we saw in John Hughes movies and all of that. I mean, for us, a massive treat was just going to McDonald's, because even those were rare when I was growing up. It was more of going out to a Wimpy and getting a bender in a bun. Sounds strange. I even remember when the first McDonald's opened in my own hometown. Let's just put it this way. It was such a kind of, like a spaceship had landed or something, and it was so revolutionary that the first Saturday night McDonald's was open until midnight, bad mistake, there was a riot. And I don't mean figuratively, I mean literally. There was a riot in the streets where all the youths who'd gathered after the pubs had closed, because we had nowhere else to go before that until McDonald's foolishly decided to open up until 12 o'clock, had gathered, got a bit impatient, and then ran down the street smashing windows. McDonald's soon learnt their lesson and closed at 11:30, let's put it that way. And then, of course, there was the phones, you know. The telephone wasn't for casual chats like they are now. I mean, my daughter and her brother, they'll just go on chats on WhatsApp and just leave it on. They won't actually be talking. They'll just sort of be existing in the same virtual space. I grew up in a period where you have a conversation, you've got something to say, and somebody has something to say back to you. Anyway, our phones in the UK weren't like those in the US on the movies where they had an extra long curly wire that would allow the teenage daughter to take the phone all the way into her bedroom so she could talk to her boyfriend. No, I think mine sat on a chest of drawers in the hallway and a very short cord. So all your phone calls had to be taken in the hallway. I guess this prevented, the daughter from running up expensive phone bills. And if you really, really wanted to talk to a friend in private, then yeah, you'd have to go down to the local red telephone box, which smelled faintly of wee. No, it didn't smell faintly of wee. It stank of wee. We also developed weird muscle memory from a technique that's now exists only in museums. We know the unique satisfaction of timing the record button perfectly to just cut out the DJ speaking and then the DJ coming back after a record was played on the radio. So we could put together perfect compilation tapes recorded from the radio. I mean, recording the top 40 and mastering that ability to cut out the DJ at the beginning and the DJ at the end was a fine art that we mastered. Just hitting that button just in time for Too Shy by Kajagoogoo to come in. I mean, this was all before Now That's What I Call Music. Interestingly enough, when I was 14, I went to my first sort of proper house party and somebody had bought a new album there and it was Now That's What I Call Music 4. Wow, I think the Thompson Twins were on it and stuff like that, maybe the Human League. Now That's What I Call Music 4. Do you know they still publish Now That's What I Call Music albums? And you know what number they're on? 125. Do you feel old now? Number 2, our cultural DNA is not the same as you boomers at all, or boomers. Every generation has its soundtrack, I get that. And ours was completely different. While the boomers, of course, had the Beatles and Woodstock and the Summer of Love, man, our identity was shaped by something a little bit grittier, a kind of rejection of the 60s and 70s rock. We were saved by punk and post-punk, new wave, the birth of pop synth and grunge later on. These weren't the genres you'd pop on in the background. No, they were like tribal. They were our escape from the anxieties of the time. Mass unemployment, the 3-day week, the Cold War, all that cheerful stuff we grew up with in the 80s. In my hometown, it was rumoured, I don't know if it was an urban myth, that we were number 3 in the Russian strike list for nuclear Armageddon, should a nuclear war come. Number 3 on the list. Charming. I think it was because just outside where I lived was this field of massive antennas that communicated with the nuclear submarines, apparently. Anyway, that's what we live with, the threat of nuclear Armageddon. All the great things come back, don't they? Gulp. I mean, Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Two Tribes wasn't just a pop song, it was a kind of political observation of the time. I love Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I went to see them twice. I had the Frankie Says t-shirt and all of that. Anyway, it's weird now when I watch YouTube videos about Frankie Goes to Hollywood that actually none of them are actually playing on the record. I'm slightly disillusioned because they sounded amazing in concert. But no, Trevor Horn just replaced all the musicians with proper musicians, apart from Holly Johnson's voice. Oh well. Anyway, the point is all this music bred a certain attitude, the slacker ethos that became a badge of honour. It was a healthy suspicion of corporate sellout, We were drenched in cynicism and a dark, uniquely British sense of humour. I grew up on Not on the 9 O'Clock News, The Young Ones, Blackadder, then later on things like The Fast Show and stuff like that, where the next day in the playground at school, everybody would be sharing and reciting the sketches from the night before. And that became our common culture. That developed the world of kind of banter and pee-taking, which is such an important part of British life. And even the subcultures felt like ours. The rave and acid house scene in the UK was massive. Dance and getting off your head was absolutely massive back in the day when I was growing up. I mean, I remember the time of proper nightclubs before the rave scene, with sticky carpets and Cinzano and lemonades and all the women in their little kind of nightclub dresses dancing around the handbag and all the blokes in their Farrah trousers all looking smart at the bar, refusing to dance because that's for pufters, innit, mate? Cut a few years later, everyone's off their head, giving it shapes. Dancing becomes the universal language of love, with the help of the odd drug. Then you had Britpop, of course, and the whole lad culture of the 90s, which, to be honest, in retrospect, now we look through today's modern lens, perhaps is a bit dodgy in places. But at the time, it felt hedonistic. These movements were movements on our own terms. They had very little to do with the generation that came before us. They were our invention. My town was split between the casuals and the alternative kids. The alternatives went to grammar school and wore the kind of second-hand trench coats and listened to The Smith and Am I Miserable Now? Whilst the casuals went to my school and wore their Farrah trousers and Tacchini tracksuit tops and listened to The Jam and stuff like that. You can't compare that revolutionary feeling of seeing the Smiths on Top of the Pops for the first time with Morrissey, for some strange reason, wearing a hearing aid in his ear and your dad sitting next to you going, "Why's that bloke got hearing aid on?" Or even better, the first time Culture Club appeared on Top of the Pops and Boy George was dancing there and your father didn't even realise that it was a bloke and was saying, "Oh, she's quite nice." And then us teenage kids would be going, "Dad, that's a bloke." And he was like, "What, eh?" Reason number 3, we were the overlooked sort of middle child. That's what we are. We're the middle child of the generations, the forgotten child. Not the favourite, not the latest, but the forgotten middle child. This is a big one. A core part of the Gen X psyche is feeling completely overlooked, squeezed between two massive, loud generations. The boomers who seem to know it all and the Gen Zens with all their anxiety and moaning about it on social media. I mean, I've talked at length about this in other videos. In fact, you can check that out here. In fact, if you're new to my channel or one of the 82% of people who watch my content on a regular basis, then you should subscribe. And that way you'll always be up to date when I post videos like this. Anyway, as I was saying, the sandwich generation. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. In America, there are roughly 75 million boomers and about 83 million millennials. And us, a little sliver in the middle, yeah? This means that for the past few decades, oh, look, a heron. I'll see if I can get that heron. There's a heron down there. It's walking away. I'll try and zoom in and see if you can see it. He's going to take flight. Heron. Here he goes. You see the heron? Maybe I'm a bit of a boomer, bird watching now. Anyway, this means that for decades, and the most recent decades, the cultural and political conversation just sort of leapfrogged right over us. You know, went straight from boomers complaining about millennials to millennials complaining about boomers. You know, we're just sort of here in the middle, the quiet ones in the corner, you know, just getting on with it. Governments, you know, kind of try to kowtow to the pensioners, the boomers, and at the same time, the upcoming voters. And, you know, Gen X, well, stuff them. And that feeling also extends to how our families sort of tend to live now. So many of us are the classic sandwich generation I've talked about before. We're often simultaneously trying to care for aging boomer parents while also providing financial and emotional and sometimes housing support to our millennial or Gen Z kids who are trying to get started in a ridiculously expensive world. I know somebody whose kids, you know, have got a good job in the city, doing really well, and they're in their mid-20s and they still live at home. And you know what? Why not? They live in London, they're going to save a fortune, and they just can't afford to buy a house by themselves. This is what we're faced with Gen X. Our older parents who are kind of living for longer, and our kids who are kind of staying at home for longer. This dual pressure is immense, and I'd say it's a defining feature of those of us who are kind of in their 50s, which is a big part of Gen Xers right now. And number 4, our relationship with tech. Now, this might be the most important distinction of all. We are not digital natives. We are absolutely not technophobes. We are the vital link between the old world and the new world. We are the bridge generation, the only generation that has lived, worked, and functioned properly in both the digital and analog worlds. We remember life before the internet, but we also embraced it, adopted it, and even helped build the digital world that we all live in now. Sorry about that. We've grown with it adapted with it. Even if tech feels like it's moving a million miles an hour, we're on board. We're not that fumbling person who can't work their phone, i.e. a boomer. A psychologist recently coined a brilliant term I read called temporal dissonance. It's the state of holding multiple distinct technological realities in your nervous system at the same time. I love that idea. It's so true. We are tech aware, but not tech native. We see technology as a tool to be used. We've always seen it as a tool to be used, not as an extension of our very being. I remember getting my first email address at work and thinking it was the most incredible, futuristic thing ever, and it was going to change the way that we worked. Reality is it just clogged up your time. Until I retired, I was spending half my day trying to get my inbox to zero. Yeah, the novelty soon wore off. I also remember getting access at work for the first time to Alta Vista and search engines. If you're a millennial or younger, this will sound crazy, but we had no email, no internet search. I know, crazy. But when we had it, it did feel like we had the whole world of information at our fingertips. And it was mind-blowing. You could just go down rabbit holes searching for information and weird and wonderful things. And yeah, that's what I did. If anything, that was probably the start of my not paying attention at work. The rise of the internet. I used to look up pictures from old TV shows that we were as a kid and then hand them around in the office and go, who remembers Hong Kong Phooey? Who remembers Top Cat? And stuff like that. Anyway, the point is this gave us a unique, and let's be honest, skeptical perspective. We adopted social media as adults, so we tend to be more deliberate about it. We have a finely tuned radar for nonsense and a sales pitch disguised as a life hack. We value authenticity, I would say, probably because we remember what life was like without filters. Quick tip, a boomer on Facebook is more likely to fall for an internet scam or a fake news story that someone posted that, to be honest, to anyone with a basic tech brain, you know is a scam. Reason number 5, our view on work and the future is fundamentally different. As I said, our entire outlook, our careers and money was shaped by completely different economic reality. We walked into the workforce just as the whole idea of a job for life was becoming a myth. It was dying. The promise of a great final salary pension that our parents' generation was almost guaranteed, gone. That was disappearing fast. For us, idealism was quickly replaced by pragmatism. We learned that you needed to look out for yourself as the world became a bit more dog-eat-dog. This led to a massive amount of retirement anxiety and still does, especially for those Gen Xers who are coming up to their retirement age, or at least beginning to think about retirement as they sort of enter their 50s and stuff like that. According to statistics, we are the generation least confident about our retirement prospects. I did a whole video about this. We got there too late for the best pension schemes, but too early to benefit from career things like full enrolment. I know, I feel like I was 10 years too late investing in my pension because of that. The financial worry is constant. It's a low-level sort of hum in the background for many of us. Again, I've done a deep dive on this, and you can check out the video here. And I think it all feeds into a deep-seated resistance to becoming that grumpy, out-of-touch authority figure we once rallied against as rebels and punks. That comment I saw about becoming the new boomers, that's our greatest fear. Oh my God, I'm just like my dad. It's that fear of losing that independent, skeptical, slacker, cool edge that have always defined us. Wearing, band t-shirts and Converse shoes, yeah, that's not enough to fight off the boomer accusation. We refuse to believe there's no future because we're still busy trying to build one for ourselves and maybe for our kids. So no, we're not boomers. We're the quiet generation, the bridge generation. We're the ones who remember how to use a pencil to fix a cassette tape, but also how to build you a website. We're the ones holding it together in the middle, trying to keep everyone happy. And that's an identity that's complicated, yeah? It's a bit stressful, but it's ours, and it's worth holding on to. Whatever. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below. What's the most Gen X thing that you think makes you Gen X and all of that? Put the comments down below. And of course, if you've liked this video, hit the likes because I like it, YouTube likes it, and it helps people like you find content just like this. And if you're new to my channel, then do me the great honor. Please hit the subscribe button, toggle the notification bell, and that way you'll know when I go live with videos just like this. And I've also opened memberships if you're interested. Don't have to, but you can check that out as well. And if you want to see more content just like this, why don't you check out the videos right here? These ones here. Oh, they're lovely. You'll love them. Thanks for watching. Peace out.